Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Looking Deeper. This is Denise King Francisco, aka Dana, and Sandra Herrick. Hey, Sand.
How are you? Good evening, everybody. It's good to be here on our monthly show. And here we go. One more time.
Here we go. Lily is in the chat room. Lady Hawk is in the chat room. So if you were wondering, is the chat room open? It is. Come on in. The water is fine. And I think that our conversation tonight ought to be a good one.
I hope so. We managed to do something every time we managed to do something. Hi, ladies.
So I find it really interesting. This morning I was inspired, we'll just say, that you and I should talk about living a life that others may not understand, because you and I can relate to that. I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Right? What inspired you?
Just this thought that there are a lot of people that really have, it's kind of kitschy to say, but found themselves in the past year at home and maybe have become more aware of who they are in their isolation, maybe their true gypsy or spiritual self or renegade, what have you, maybe has come to light. And maybe in the process of being home with lots of time, or frontline workers out there busting their hump for us 24/7, maybe people have decided that being authentic is probably a good thing. But how do you do that when people don't like it?
Well, that's a really good conversation, and I agree with you. This has been a challenge in a way that we, certainly as Americans, have never had to experience on such a level of being isolated, being self-confronted, and also by being stymied and I guess the best word to say is pulled away from our addictive patterns of whatever we did to not have to know who we were or to avoid what we didn't want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Or to even live a life that wasn't as honest as we wanted it to be. So this, and for me, there's that beautiful opportunity to say, this has been a time of great self-discovery, of great opportunity to find out who you are in yourself, in your relationships, or in your marriage, or in your family. And not everybody understands the necessity to do that, or to do it kind of like as a maintenance. So there's been a lot of drama. There's been a lot of reality. And I'm grateful that it's happening, but I'm also concerned what happens with everybody when they come out and, are floundering.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go for it.
Let's talk about it. So in your own personal life, Sandy, how old were you approximately, or what were the circumstances that led you to decide that your life was your own and that you were willing to move through whatever you needed to move through, let go of, embrace, reevaluate in order to be authentic to the life that your soul knows that you need to lead in order to have joy and this human experience be fulfilling?
You said that all in one breath.
I did. I wanted to get it all out so I didn't miss anything while I was asking you. Yeah. Hey, I remember turning 30 and thinking to myself, oh, okay, I'm owning this. And then when I turned 40 and then 50, the 10-year marker for me, every decade, it got a little more pronounced.
Yeah. Well, that would be definitely part of the way that I would answer it, is that it came in increments of my age developing a personality that was confronted by what was expected of me by being that age. And either me finding out this wasn't working for me, or by me being told you don't fit. And it's that place where when you really ask how old I was, what was the age, the very first and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, the very first was when I was 19. What did I travel then? 18 years old. When I went across America with my friend Jean, and it was the first time to get in a Volkswagen bus and head out across America. And we went on this wonderful, wonderful adventure and came back at the end of the summer. And when I walked into my group's kind of first gathering that I came back and I, Friday night or whatever it was, go meet the girls. When I went back and found everybody in the same tempo, talking the same conversations, talking about the boyfriends, talking about what's going on, playing the games, being the familiar, I was no longer a part of that group. And no one really asked me about my trip. Mm. And it was and it's not good news, bad news. It was all the observation of, I'm different than this now. And it was also, I believe, in the defining line of, I went to art school and they went to college. I left the area, we left the area. But it was like we came back and I wasn't a part of my high school group anymore. That really was the significant difference. That something inside me went out on a limb in that way of finding, not that I knew I discovered I needed more adventure than my hometown. And I didn't know exactly what to do it. Living close to New York, that was exciting, that was good. But I would say that it was the first stirring inside me, and I didn't know how deeply it was going to affect me, maybe for another 8 years or 7 years. But that was that place where, something's different. It seemed natural because of school and changing, and you were no longer going to the same school and seeing each other all the time. The next stage that was significant was literally when I was 21, and I was going to the Catholic Church to organize myself getting married. And the priest said point blank, and I've told this story before, okay, you can certainly be married, but your marriage will not be, acknowledged as a authentic Catholic marriage. You can't get married at the altar, and your children will not be, allowed into the Catholic Church or seen as Catholics. They won't receive blessing. And it was like, excuse me, what? And because I loved somebody that wasn't Catholic, my children were going to be carrying mortal sin. And I walked out of the Catholic Church. And so that rub right there was the beginning of something that I could say, all of a sudden, I didn't know where I was, but I know that I was on a road that was different than I ever assumed I was going to have. And I could never retrieve the old way that I thought I was supposed to grow up. And I think that's an important thing to be able to say, that I couldn't retrieve what I thought I was supposed to grow up and be. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm listening. I'm glad I asked the question.
I thought I dropped you there for a second.
No.
No, thank you very much. And then, 25 was, I'm a kick-ass broad that wants to, live in my own identity, dating a black man. 30 was definitely, I was able to, go self-employed. If God wanted me to work for him or her, she better give me a job. And then at 35, when I went to Europe at 34, I knew, I was shocked that I needed to leave America. I was shocked that I didn't fit in the town that I wanted to stay in, I thought, for the rest of my life, which was Santa Barbara. And then I'll just stop at 35. I was old enough to be who I was for the first time in my life. I felt I qualified with some kind of age to have some kind of wisdom to be what I was as an independent, self-employed psychotherapist through psychic phenomena, transactional, all that stuff. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew I was doing it.
It was moving through you. That's outstanding.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And you know, like you, there's that place where no matter where I went, I fit in until I didn't.
Right.
So I was, you know, so happy to fit in every time I fit in. And then it was like, oh, shoot, I'm not fitting in no more. So, you know, from one city to another, one relationship to another, one continent to another, one state to another. So here I sit. And even in New Hampshire, I mean, as long as I'm here, but I know this isn't my last destination.
Wow.
Stuff is going to have to happen somewhere along the line. So, you know, that itch is always entertaining.
Yes, it is.
But I think the question also relates to, and I want to ask you, you know, when people disagree with our lives, that is really a very sincere sorrow, because being so radically different in I am this quote unquote kind of phenomena of psychic or spiritual or rebellious to the norm, people had major issues with my belief system or the way that I was designing my life to live. And I didn't always have the words to justify myself. How did you deal with that?
Well, I've known since I was very young that I was different. I knew that since I was a very young girl that I was adopted. And so that made me different right off the bat. And that showed itself in different ways. And to your point of trying to fit in, you try to fit in to the family that has adopted you. And you try to be part of that until either you're told that you're not part of it, or you feel that you're not really part because you're not the same. There's not a sameness.
How old were you when they told you that you were adopted and you comprehended what that meant?
I remember knowing and fully comprehending that when I was 5. Wow. And that's also when the visitations from spirit really ramped up, when I was 5 years old. And I knew that it was different. And the explanation that I always got about the visitations was that I had an overactive imagination, or I was watching too much TV, because there was so much TV to be watched in 1968. I mean, heavens. But so I always knew I was different, and I understood it even in my little self. And I recognized that not everybody understood me, even as a little girl.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, if you're going to talk about visitations, you know, when did I know I was different from the family? I, too, when I was little, and this would have been between the ages of 3, 4, 5, and, you know, it really started with the visitations where if I'm sleeping at night and either one of my parents came in, it was labeled as the boogeyman. My sister didn't see it. My brother didn't see it. You know, he was younger, and we all had our bedrooms in the same room. And nobody saw these things that I saw. And I was accused of either making it up or having bad dreams or don't exaggerate. And the trauma of not being believed, but being told, I was kind of abandoned with go to sleep. Just go back to sleep. It's okay. It was just, you know, they're not here. It's your imagination. The difference was I had to learn how to self-soothe when I woke up, because I wasn't being really soothed when I asked for help.
Yes. I totally get that. As a young girl, it was, habit that at bedtime I was locked in my bedroom from the outside, and my brother was locked in his bedroom from the outside of his bedroom. And we were let out of our bedrooms the following morning. And I remember being terrified a few nights that, the visitations were happening. I didn't understand them, and not being able to get help. And the best that I could do was to cover my head up with my blanket.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And pray and scream. But how did you did you scream? Did you bang? Did you cry? Did you make noise?
No, I was a very quiet child. And actually, I was nonverbal until I was well into my toddler years. I did not speak. And so I kept quiet to myself, other than, letting somebody know that this is what happened. And being told I was watching too much TV. So, when you're a quiet child, you listen to that and you take it in and you decide early on, then you're just going to have to get through it. Right? Even when we're that little, we can have that cognizant understanding that we need to do something just to get through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But did you ever explain it to somebody? Because I would try to explain it best I could.
Uh-huh.
Somebody would show up when my mother or father or the babysitter showed up, and he's screaming, "There's somebody here, there's somebody here, something's touching me, something da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da." And the frustration that they had was, "Oh, for gosh sakes," or "Go to sleep," or "Come on now," or, I don't remember really going into my parents' bed to sleep with them. I was left to sleep in my room. But we didn't talk about it during the day. It was trying to explain what I saw at night.
Yeah.
Remember the gasping, the incredible sobbing because I was so scared. I mean, I didn't just cry and have somebody, I would be screaming bloody murder.
Wow.
So that's why I asked, how did you, seek help, or what did you call out?
Yeah, I internalized it, right? And, being very Catholic little girl, I would pray, and I would pray to Mary, and, to take it away, to make it go away. And that was my introduction at a very young age to angelic beings, or that when we talk about, last month you and I talked about walking with the avatars, I understood that there was more to just the prayers, and there was more to just the stories, that these beings that we talk about are very much alive in spirit. And that made me different, but at the time I didn't know it, because there is a part of us sometimes when we are different from everyone else and we keep quiet about it, we assume everybody else is having the same experience. And for me, I assumed that for many years, that everybody saw these things and everybody felt this way. And you just try to get along and try to fit in and not ruffle feathers and just keep moving through it. Lily is adding to the conversation. She is saying, I can relate to many of what you both are sharing, but especially hiding under my pillow when I was little.
Yeah.
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 And I don't know if anybody had this toy when they were little. It's like a little bit of a box, and it had a little mirror on it, and a little toy roller, and dials, and this. And, babies have it to kind of associate with different sounds and objects and hand, nose, all these coordinated things. When I would have a nightmare or see a vision, not knowing I was seeing a vision, or seeing a being, not knowing I was actually seeing a being, but it certainly, to me, there were real physical entities in the room.
Mm-hmm.
That's to the closet or went under the bed with all those things. It gives me the goosebumps.
Yeah.
Damn. I would visualize that toy in front of me, and I would dial up Hopalong Cassidy when you talk about TV. We didn't have a lot of TV in the 50s. So, but thank God we had Hopalong Cassidy, we had Gene Autry, and I would always dial up that I had to change what I was seeing to something I wanted to see. And it's fascinating in hindsight that it would be a cowboy with horses. And that medicine was already so strong as an antidote to my panic. Absolute panic.
Mm-hmm.
So, Lily, I ask you, when you pulled over the covers, how did you scream for help or ask for help or panic? Did you get soothed with the covers over your face?
Right.
Because I didn't really get soothed, but I whimpered down with that, where a child has to, through the tremors of being quieted.
Mm-hmm. Kelly Spencer is adding, I would pile up every stuffed animal I owned and would hide underneath. And Lily is saying, oh yeah, Kelly, that too.
Pillows, blankets, pressed up against the back of the bed in the corner. I mean,
Right.
So vulnerable. So vulnerable. Wow.
Yeah. Looking back at all of those, I can see incrementally how in my life I had to begin to integrate my different. And everybody is different. So I'm not saying my different is any better than anybody else's different.
Right.
But some people will negate their different, or they will never live their different in order to just get along and not make any waves. And for me, there came a point when I knew it would make waves when I talked about knowing things or seeing things or having like thoughts with Kelly Spencer in 7th grade. We wouldn't say a word, but we would both have the same thought and blurt it out at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so we found commonality in our different. And over time, the voice of the different let me know that my different was part of my soul's avocation. It was part of why I came to be here, no different than an artist or whatever our different is. And I learned, it seems, at a young age, maybe 30, 35 years old. For me, that's young. But I was really starting to own it at that point. Speaking, who I am and being that, not shying from it, even though at that time, West Michigan was very, very, very religiously right wing.
Right.
Tremendously. I'd never experienced that in my life.
Wow.
But there comes a point when your soul says, pay attention to me, and yes, honor the different.
Right.
And when we do that, then we start to see the changes with regard to the people in our lives.
Right.
Those that leave, those that come on board, those that are there for just a few moments, teachers that come in and out. And I think that that's part of the beauty of honoring the different, regardless of whether or not people understand. But I'm also not negating that for some people, living a life others don't understand really is not an option they feel for their well-being. How do you feel about that, Sandy?
Well, gratefully enough, my family was all psychic. I mean, my mother, my father, enough of the kids that we understood that we had psychic phenomena in the house. So once we moved to the Adams Lane, there was phenomena. So I am grateful to say that people would come to our house and experience our family as different. Also, because I come from a family, 7 kids, 9 including parents, we were officially a tribe. So we were seen as different in a group and as a family because we were big, we were loud, we were all those things. So I can honestly say, in my difference of being Sandy from the family, I was also different as a family member with my family. So it kind of breaks down to, at some point, the fracture with my family was I am different from them. And that was heartbreaking because we were all seen as a cluster for a while. And so in that place of where did I make peace with my, I would say that I identify in that real elegance of owning something in me has to be validated by my outside world, because I need to be validated, so because I felt so strongly about the difference. It wasn't going to be given to me in the schools or this or that. But interestingly enough, I went back to community college after I was different in the business world. It didn't work. I was different in being married. That didn't work. I was different in being the average girlfriend. That didn't work. So, I left my high-rise apartment, went to community college, and was led by spirit to Reverend Bronnie Brown. And you did a reading for her with me one day. Mm-hmm. And also my art teacher, Ann Chernow. And they were the two that saw my difference, that caught me as an artist and as a psychic. And to be caught at 27 by people that didn't know necessarily how to get me where I needed to go, but got me to see I needed to start realizing I wasn't going to fit in. And I had to do something to establish my identity safely. That there would be avenues, whether I went to be an artist or a psychic, that they cared about how I was going to find my way. And so at 27, I was brazen enough to know I had to leave my home community and go to California. And so I entered California as a psychic. That's how I introduced myself when I landed. And it's interesting. I want to say I met my friend Pam. Something's banging outside. I met my friend Pam, who found me on Facebook. And with her validation, with her acceptance of me as the psychic, as this kind of renegade person, I was caught. I didn't fit in with my life in LA for a long time, but her alliance with me gave me a great place to be able to not just be damned. We had an alliance. So you and Kelly, in growing up, I didn't have that in my childhood with anybody. I did not have that with anybody in my family, or and I didn't have a best friend as a child at all. And I had a best friend in high school, but as soon as I became psychic, that was like, no. So I was an outcast from that. And Pam is the first friend I met. She was like 10 years my junior, maybe 8-9 years my junior. And there's that place where it is so important to be able to have an ally.
Yes.
We don't need to have many, but if we have one really good ally, and I'm amazed at my own emotion right now in remembering how much of an ally Pam was. When I got ordained, when I did my first act as a minister, when I would do Easters, to have her go with me. And it wasn't like she was supporting me like, you can do it, Sandy. It was, she made me feel normal and capable. So Pam, I thank you.
Aww.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That would be my Sandy Shoemaker. God rest her soul. Sandy Shoemaker. I met Sandy because her husband was actually our corporate vice president and corporate counsel at the newspaper. And everyone knew that Sandy was a little different. And everyone had their opinion about that, because everybody has an opinion. And I met her and I fell in love with her. She's 30 years older than me. And when she was widowed, when her husband passed, she and I became traveling companions.
Oh, wow.
And she was my first roomie when I went to Britain for the first time. She taught me what to pack, what to expect on the airplane, etc., etc. But she took me under her wing in so many astonishing ways. And there again, we found an alliance through corporate America at a newspaper of all places in honoring our different. And she really didn't give a shit what people thought about her or her spiritual beliefs or any other thing like that. She was a world traveler, and she and I hit it off. And when she finally passed in her, I think she was in her late 70s, early 80s, a couple years
Oh, wow.
back. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
she never really talked about her age, so I can't, really speak to that. But
Right.
she was my Pam.
Wow.
Yeah, so going to Egypt and all of those sorts of things, that was Sandy saying, don't worry that you're different. Life is too short. Get out there and live it, and this is who you are. And oh, by the way, let's go have an adventure, and I'll show you how to do it. Don't worry.
Amen.
Amen. So Lily is weighing in on something we just talked about.
Okay.
She's saying, yes, just like you, Sandy, I wasn't soothed. I had that loud whimper when I would cry where I couldn't breathe. It was hard for many people around me to understand what I was going through. I feel that I was more out of my body than in my body for many years when I was young, because it was hard for me to cope and feel safe because of many things going on spiritually.
Yes. Yeah. And we suffocate. It's a part of our soul or our spirit that we suffocate. And I say that because we do stop breathing and we stop having breath given to us to share so that we can thrive or feel safe in describing it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that place of horror, I want to say, that if you talk about it, you get shamed or belittled or denied or made less than because of the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say that there was a time where in my describing or trying to explain as a young person in the 70s, in my 20s, what it's like to be psychic and have it be challenged or deemed as even legitimate. There was bona fide interest, but there was also that dismissal of, who do you think you are? Well, what are you going to do with that? Or where all that snide stuff, or even, yes, you're evil.
Wow.
So we, I have to be very, very, very clear in what was happening in the 70s was so phenomenally new in all this stuff compared to it happening now, where there's 45 years worth of a track record of researching, exposing, experimenting, classes where, it's something that is contemporary rather than the bizarre.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When I was literally getting involved, it was Edgar Cayce was pretty much the only resource in America to talk about.
Wow.
Yes. That's how limited it was.
Wow.
I mean, Edgar Cayce was kind of it. And that was still minimal because it was like he had the Edgar Cayce Foundation in New York, but that was still very woo-woo or bizarre and not seen as mainstream.
Right.
Where phenomena right now is extremely mainstream.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of places you can go to talk about it. And again, back in the 70s, if you went to a psychic, it was always about, am I going to get married? It wasn't about your soul. And I am so grateful that now, I mean, that's where I'm so dedicated. It's like we have people that you can come to the spiritual world because the fact is that we are different, that we're willing to talk to you about your soul, your spirit, and the experience of who you are as different, rather than, yes, you'll be married.
Right. Right.
Yes, you'll have 3 children.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you realize that I'm saying something that is so incredibly, it takes my breath away to think that that's what a psychic was really about for so long, that they were only seen as, prove to me I'm worth getting married. Do you see my boyfriend? Where's my relationship? What's next?
Ugh.
That was it.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's horrifying to me.
Or to talk to a medium that was pretty much, a table tapper or an opportunist.
Right.
And so even then, mediumship was not the gift of, am I really talking to someone? It was the gimmick for talking to someone. So we've come a long way in the 45 years that I've been in 50 years. I've been in it now for 50. I have to laugh because I did. I got into it when I was 23. And, we were skimming the wave of psychic with just, do we even sit down and look right if we're going to meditate?
Mm.
Everything was that new.
Wow. Huh.
So, yeah.
Well, I'm glad times have changed. That's all I can say with regard to that. Yikes.
I know. Well, it's the phenomena of the inclusion of the medical world, and seeing that mental health is a crossover with spiritual awareness.
Yes.
That bridge. What do you have to say about that? Because, if anybody's seen that, you certainly have.
Well, yeah, I have. And the fact is I've always said that some of the most gifted, spiritually talented people have been locked up in psychiatric hospitals because they weren't schooled in what it is, or how to maintain it or balance it or keep it, in a good way.
Right.
That they were medicated and locked away, and it became something of a scar upon the family, frankly. Well, about great grandma, that sort of a thing. And so I was really blessed anyway, that the Sarge never really understood me or what it was that I did until having pancakes one morning. And a friend of his from Vietnam, it was a Vietnam vet buddy that he met in Saigon, passed away. And I was sitting at the kitchen table, and his friend stepped through with a very specific message. My dad turned around and he dropped the spatula onto the stove. And he looked at me and he said, "Denise Lynn, is that what you've been talking about all these years? How did you know that Mac died? I just got word last night. How did you know that?" And I said, "Yeah, Daddy-o, that's what I've been talking about all these years."
How old were you then?
I was 37.
Oh, my God.
And so I think what's confusing sometimes for people too, Sandy, really, is that you and I look normal. I mean, you and I haven't gone with the extravagance that some have over the years.
No.
And so when somebody says to me, "Really, you're Denise, you look so normal."
Right.
You act normal. You have manners. Let me see. You have all your teeth. You have all your fingers, right? All your toes. You're normal.
Lapis third eye glued in your forehead.
Exactly. I had a client last week, a longtime client. I just adore her. And she said to me, "Well, what are you going to do while you're camping?" And I said, "Well, I hope I get some good golfing." And she looked at me. We were having a Zoom session, and she said, "You golf?" I said, "I do golf, and actually I'm pretty doggone good at it." And she said, "I never would have put that with you. I never in a million years would have thought that you would say that
Right.
you're a golfer, because she has a certain idea of who golfs and what a medium is.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And
I
so
mean,
in our being different, we can also, and I think it's good to have balance with what people term normal. I mean, you do normal stuff, you're painting your house, right?
well, for a 73-year-old broad, I don't know if that's normal.
Right, but it's like the stuff that you do.
Well, yeah, because what you're saying, what do I do is normal.
Yeah.
And what I do is normal is I act like everybody else, and in that there is the inclusion of the way that my right brain functions that was never normal. And because I have a low IQ on my left brain, I wasn't considered normal because it wasn't quite bright enough to function in school.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, my normal is my normal. What is my normal? I mean, I'm a human being who enjoys life. Yes, I was a single woman who lived out in the middle of New Mexico with 2 white horses. I don't know if that's normal, but for me, it was like, thank God.
Yeah, that's your normal.
That's my normal. And there's what is normal? I watch TV, I dance to music, I go out and eat and drink. You all know that. I want to have friends. I don't like being a hermit, even though I'm good at isolating. And I'm normal in the fact I can have a normal conversation as long as you don't piss me off.
Right. That's Scorpio normal. Yeah.
So, and what I'm so lucky. I am so lucky because no, it is not normal to move 50 some odd times within a lifetime if you're not in the military. It's not normal to all of a sudden feel that I can't exist in a certain place and be me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And have that feeling come like, oh my God, the force is moving me. It's not normal to be aware of something that alters reality and you have to tell somebody that something is going to happen. That's not normal. But it's normal for us.
Yes.
And in that, I don't see me as not being normal.
Right. Even if other people don't understand it.
Exactly. And I think that's very important to be able to express to everybody that what is normal to me is normal to me. I'm not suffering at this point by being who I am. And when I suffered by being psychic, it was I didn't know how I was going to be able to be it. Because I could not fit in the corporate world. You're very lucky. You fit in the corporate world for a long time.
Well, that was my military upbringing.
Well, God bless, but you fit.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
And you had a niche that took care of you and gave you a normalcy. And then when you broke out, whatever else happened has happened, and thank God, because we all benefit from it. But at 25 years old, I knew I was not going to be married. I was not going to be in the corporate world. I'd already been married. It didn't work. I already was in the corporate world. And I was 25 years old, sitting in my vice president's Cadillac, and told him, when he said, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know, but I'm never going to go back to that. And it was like you could see him overwhelmed with that, like, what do you mean? I said, I've got to be whatever I am in this psychic, that has to figure something out. And
Mm-hmm.
He was sad for me. He goes, I don't know how you can do that. But it was that. So if you're going to really ask that question about when did my life break out, I was 25 years old, sitting in a Cadillac with my black boyfriend, and said, this isn't going to work. And it wasn't about his relationship with me. It was about my relationship with being in the business world.
Wow.
And so leaving that dream that was actually fulfilled, living in a high rise, being independent, having a business, a job, and kind of living the dream of, we're making it as a woman now. Because again, thank God for the 70s, it was like you didn't have to get married. You didn't have to have children. So even that, my life was protected I could be protected by the environment changing.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew that I wasn't going to fit in because I couldn't hold down a job.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I remember one
my
time.
psychic wouldn't let me.
Yeah, because your soul said, but listen, this is your soul, Sandy.
Yeah.
I'm calling.
You're going to get fired.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Pick up the phone. I'm dialing in right now. I remember one time sitting with Elise, and it was after an equestrian event. And all the girls were coming over to my place, of course, because my house, as you know, when the kids were in high school and junior high, my house was the flop house for all the kids. And so it was my turn to have the equestrian team. And they loved coming to my place. And I remember Elise looking at me and saying, Mother, whatever you do not talk about that stuff around Stephanie.
Oh.
And I looked at her and I said, what? And she goes, you know that stuff? She's really churchy. For God's sakes, Mother, don't talk about... I said, oh, so you just want me to leave that part of me out of the conversation while the girls are all over? Yes, please, Mom. Just be a normal mom. And she has said that to me, in the last couple of years, actually. Mom, just be the mom, okay? Can you just be the mom? And I will always say, I'll just be the mom. And I know that you really can't separate the two. But no. I will say to her to soothe her, I'll just be the mom, honey. I'll just be the grandma, I don't understand why you have to, find your biological family. What is that within you? And then she watched the show Taken at Birth.
Oh, wow. How'd she do?
She was absolutely speechless, and she started to cry. And she said, now I understand. I said, I know because I'm the mom. So when you look at mom, the normal mom, in most kids' mind, the mom doesn't have any needs or desires, right? Other than making sure her children are well taken care of, right? And so there was a misunderstanding or not understanding of why for all of these many years I was even curious.
Right.
But there is something, within you that if you don't move forward, Spirit will move forward on your behalf. So as it turns out, I didn't have to find my biological family. They found me.
Right.
Because Spirit will set in motion, if you're not paying attention to your soul, well, your soul has other avenues of getting stuff done, right?
And again, you're lucky because now the 1, 2, 3 or the whatever these processes are that are allowing our DNA to be researched. I mean, again, if it were 20 years ago, you'd be sitting there thinking, I'm never going to find out who I am. And I wonder, you'd have to call somebody like me, Sandy, who am I? Who's my dad, Sandy?
Yeah. Whoops. Right. Because even my attorney, when all those years ago, well, my goodness, 35 years ago, she had my case files open and she looked at me and she said, some things are just better left unknown. And you need to not look any further.
Right. What's amazing, Dana, is to think that when you called me that day, that the DNA tests were not even out yet.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Or just on the brink.
Right.
So, to think that, research is bringing to us new ways of finding out who we are.
Right.
And also, in my family, interestingly enough, my brothers do not want to take the DNA test because they point blank said they don't want to find out if they have brothers and sisters that my daddy was busy.
Yeah. I've heard that same thing from others.
So, the girls don't carry that in the family. They can't find out what your daddy did through the girls.
Exactly.
But if the boys do it, It's like,
Yeah. It's intriguing, isn't it?
yeah. So it's, yeah,
Yeah.
it really is. We're finding out more and more and more and more. And what I liked about for you is that when your relatives reached out, can you imagine the amount of conversation you would have had as a child about spirit and psychic, because they all have that DNA?
Exactly. It would have been a very different life.
And that's where I do know I am grateful that my family has that. We were able to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And even though we might have been mocked, we clamored together and knew that we're different, and we scared people, but we weren't different to us.
Right.
We honored the tribe. We always acknowledged that we're a clan.
Mm-hmm.
So, and clans do offend other people that may be a strong family, but they don't acknowledge themselves as a clan. Have you seen that? Have you felt that out there?
With regard to my own family?
Yeah. Because your Southern folks are clan.
Oh, yeah, the King clan. Oh, my God, I love them. They're astonishing people. But, on the other end of that spectrum, it was, 7 years ago that I did a podcast with David Sturkin talking about what it was like to be adopted. And that opened up a whole Pandora's box and a whole can of worms about how dare you talk about that on a podcast. How dare you? By my adoptive mother. It opened up a can of worms that, was shut in a very harsh way. Why do you have to be so different? Why do you have to be so honest about talking about your feelings and talking about your experience? I don't understand that. Just toe the line.
So let me ask you.
Yeah.
What does that say about her need versus yours?
That her need comes first.
And her need would be what?
Well, to be the director of the experience and the keeper of the secrets, and in this case, the keeper of the secrets.
Yes, definitely the keeper of the secret. And the secret being that you're not to expose that she was not able to have a child.
Right.
Or that you were bought to satisfy her.
Well, that was the big secret. I mean, because, she did have a child, but she did have a biological child. But the secret was that I was purchased in a motel room. And there were many, many secrets that if you are a secret keeper, it causes panic and pandemonium, right? When it's about to be exposed. But even in that, not towing the line and being who I am, it cost me a lot.
Right.
And
well, being who I am has cost me my family.
Yes.
And not sometimes wanting to be, keep the secret, even though I still keep the secret. It's like,
Right.
Yeah.
And it's when you finally come to a point where, and it's a process, so it's not an overnight thing, where you say, my desire to be authentic to me is more important than towing the line or continuing to whatever for the benefit of someone else. It is liberating, but it is a process.
Right. And what we're really saying is whose identity has to be more honored or be salvaged.
Right.
Does my identity have to sacrifice itself because somebody else wants their identity to be protected or not seen or disrespected? I mean, that's a whole other conversation. I could go down that road, right? Because it's like, if somebody's secrets and then, you're outcast because it's like, you're too dangerous. It's like, well, who am I protecting?
Right.
Me or you?
And at what cost?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And, and being an adopted person, for any of you out there that are listening, you understand, I call it drinking the adoption Kool-Aid. And the adoption Kool-Aid says that you're to be grateful for the fact that somebody adopted you. You're to be grateful for everything that was given to you. And that is part of the adoption Kool-Aid. And the allegiance is something that is expected, required, and part of the deal. And that comes with a really high cost. In coming to terms with the fact that you do at some point get to be you.
Right.
And whether or not you find your biological family, being inquisitive about it, it's okay. And if people are offended by that, well, sometimes maybe you have to go to counseling, what have you. But even changing my last name to King, taking my biological last name, why did you do that? Well, it's about owning the energy of it. And damn it, it took me a long time to get to that nugget. So I'm owning it.
Well, even to find that your name was King.
Right. Yeah.
We also now have a whole other set of circumstances with a tremendous amount of people who are sperm donored.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that I'm finding now because the children that are created from the donations of sperm are now old enough to discover who their parents are. Yes. Because of all these DNA tests and whatnot. And family members, I have a client literally who found out how many sisters and brothers she has from somebody who gave a lot of sperm to get money to go to college.
Yeah. Yes. I was reading an article about a man that found out he had dozens of children that connected with him, and he's so happy. He gets lots of birthday cards, and he sends lots of birthday cards, and I thought, wow.
Yeah. And I'm very, very pleased that when she found out who her father was, that he and his family was receptive to all the children that were being discovered.
Wow.
And that they're being brought in as a family rather than stay over there.
Mm-hmm. And because that happens a lot.
Yeah.
I was very blessed that did not happen.
No.
At all. I mean, my cousin Corey and my cousin Danielle, Corey on my mother's side of the family and Danielle on my father's side, they reached right out, and they're two of the most loving women, kind women, intelligent women, and they're just, the tip of the iceberg with my biological family. So the risk and the reward is worth it for me. But that isn't the case necessarily for everybody, and I acknowledge that.
Right. And there's the sadness of knowing that it is an absolute valid feeling when someone gets that gnawing thought, do I belong to this family?
Yes.
How am I different?
Yes.
And so now we're talking about gay people in a family that religion says you're not supposed to be gay.
Yes.
Transgender children that are finding out that are they, how did God make them?
Right.
How come they're so different? They are looking in the mirror and not even seeing their sexual identity represented.
Mm-hmm.
And to think that right now our government is still denying the privilege of the truth of someone's identity, the legal right to truly experience and express who they are. So being adopted, being different in the family, I mean, those are so big of an issue from a time when that was the only thing to go, ooh, really? Now with the sexuality and the transgender community and the gay community coming out, and it's not as much of a secret, it's It's amazing how the government has to really start looking at these are people,
Yes.
not shameful secrets.
The non-binary community is, I work with a particular group through Gathering Thunder Foundation. Not everyone has ever understood why I began Gathering Thunder Foundation either, but that's okay. My whole point
We'll forgive
is,
them.
yeah, we'll forgive them. But my point is that I work very closely with people who are non-binary. And, learning the pronouns. I'm getting pretty
Yes.
doggone good at it, quite frankly.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
am happy that, I'm not going to be another ignorant person. I'm going to find out, what are the pronouns? What do they mean? What is this phenomena that's happening?
Yes.
Let's have Todd and I go to talking circles for two-spirit people. And we will go as a heterosexual couple representing love and compassion and unconditional love for those young people that do not have it in their lives for exactly what you're talking about. There's me and Todd.
And how does it work? How do they get to be mentored or mirrored by the presence of the two of you?
Well, they get to be mirrored. They are with us and they're seeing, two older people, a married couple, saying, I want to know more. It destroys, or at least it gives another viewpoint that, okay, not all older people are judging us for being a she, he, or a he, she, or a she, her, or a he, him. But we sit and we listen and take it in. It's not a show. It is to let them know that we exist out there for them. It gives them hope.
Yeah. Yeah. And that they exist in there for you also.
Exactly. Yeah.
The very first transgender I ever met was in a beauty salon in Switzerland, in downtown Geneva. And I went to this hairdresser, and it was a gay man, and he was talking about, so busy chatting, telling me about their life that it was like he didn't realize I was going, what?
Mm-hmm.
It's like talking about the breast operation. So this would have been in the 80s. And again, in the 80s, to know that in most states, if you were caught having sex with the same sex, you were put in jail.
Right.
That to go to a drag show was like fun, but if the transgender was there, it was like, what am I looking at? We are now starting to see something that 30 years ago we weren't seeing. Right. Talk about being hidden. Talk about, it takes my breath away to realize that this isn't something that's just happening now. This is something that's just allowed to be expressed or present now.
Yes. Yes.
I think it's important to let all of us know this generation is not the first generation to have transgender children. This has had to go on for eons. What did they do?
Well, in Native American culture, they were honored as two-spirit people. They were the seers. They were the medicine people. They were the keepers of the children. They were the keepers of, the male and the female spirit within their body. They were highly revered.
Well, good on them, because good old downtown American white folk would go,
Well, right. And with the advent of the Christian church, of course, the idea of a two-spirit person being held in high regard was quickly squelched and turned into the fires of damnation, right? So we have some work to do with that.
Yeah, and let's just say Bruce Jenner is now out and about wanting to, be the governor of California, but he is literally the first quote unquote very famous person to be so incredibly outrageously successful as a man and an athlete, to twist our minds and go, you're a what? You're a woman, and to stand there, so I want to, again, that's so recent.
Yeah. I remember that Wheaties box back in the 70s.
You bet.
He was cute.
You bet.
Yeah.
He always had his long hair, perfect, but
nice
strong
legs.
and active, gorgeous legs and all that stuff. And to know that how he suffered inside.
Exactly.
And when I saw his documentary, it was like he said the very moment that he took all that sexual identity frustration and put it into the athleticism. But as soon as he crossed the finish line, as soon as he crossed, and he stopped the video and said, look at my eyes, it was, now I have to deal with the fact that I'm still a woman and I'm not.
Wow.
That winning the Olympics was the goal, that as he took the next step over the finish line, his heart broke because it didn't bring him to who he is.
Mm.
And I kind of want to reach out to everybody that's listening out there, that what we're doing here and talking to you is not just saying you're out there. We want you to be able to know that you are trying to be safe out there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we know it's not always safe, no matter how brazen or how contemporary it isn't. It's not always safe. And we have to do something about that. So I want to thank you and Todd for going out there and making people feel safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's all we want.
That is exactly it, to feel safe and secure and celebrated, actually, for who we are. Even if the celebration is within ourselves, but as human beings, the celebration within ourselves often begins with an acknowledgement from those on the outside.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Sand, well, we're over the top of the hour. Great conversation tonight.
Okie dokie. Okay. Well, everybody, if you're different, wear it. And be smart about it. And what I mean by that is have mercy and tenderness for you, and find somebody you can talk to that say, I'm here. Can you see me? And our love to you. Okay.
Have a beautiful evening, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, Sand.
Bye, everybody.